And welcome into the Cameron Podcast Studios here at Cameron University, part of the Point After on the Oklahoma Sports Network. Welcome aboard. If this is your first time, well, welcome wherever you listen to podcasts, whether it be Spotify and Apple. And for those who are actually watching on our YouTube, that's been our largest audience because we've got a built-in audience from those who subscribe to YouTube. We appreciate that. But just a reminder of our 13 schools that we have up on the network. It's easy to navigate once you download the free app. That's on Apple and Android devices. We're also on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV. As we mentioned, YouTube, you can subscribe there. Facebook, like us there, follow us there. You can kind of see, well, what's up with the Oklahoma Sports Network? How are we going to find out what's up next? Who are you going to be playing? What matchups? There's some exciting ones this week we're going to be talking about. And then also you can actually sign up for our newsletter. Over 9,000 emails go out each week to those who've signed up for just, hey, what's the latest with the Oklahoma Sports Network? It's free to be able to subscribe to that when you go to our website at oksportsnet.com. And then if you're on X, you can follow us there. If you're on Instagram, so yeah, wherever you are socially, you can find us. So as usual for our basketball of getting around of what's happening in the latest, we got to invite Jordan Rhea, who's kind of our basketball guru, especially representing the Mid-Del. And boy, there's a lot to represent with Mid-Del when you have Midwest City, Carl Albert, Del City, Midwest City boys getting their state championship. And I know that you have some ties to that program. Very excited to be able to get that trophy in some time. But now that the dust is starting to settle after the holiday break, you got some tournaments coming up. You had some tournaments there and in between some very important games. So what's your take as of what you've seen right now?
All right, Eric. Well, I'm going to go back to what I've enjoyed doing the other two times we talked, and that is now that we've had enough games for these teams since we last talked, and I did this where I get basically like my own Mid-Del power poll, but I'll mention some other OSN teams as well. And these are the teams that I think are most likely to win state, and just give an update of where they're doing. A little bit of change in the in my seating, my positions as well. So again, we'll start with Del City girls. Tuesday, massive win against Class and SAS. And I got to see Class and SAS up close, so very impressed that Del City was able to handily beat them and go into sole possession of first place in their district. They won by 14 points, or I'm sorry, 20 points, 66-46. So what happens after a massive win like that sometimes, Eric? There can be a letdown. So they go to Duncan on Friday, and they were down, I think, about 9 or more early on. They did come back and win that game, but only 5 points. Duncan girls aren't bad. You know, they gave Midwest City a good run, and they can still challenge the Bombers. We'll talk about them later on. To get into third place in that district. This is District 2 and 5A. So Del City girls looking good. We'll have their games in the Titan Classic. They will play first every game. So they're going to play some early games Thursday, Friday, and Saturday on the Titan Classic. But some good competition. They'll play Edmond Memorial. But that'll be good tests for them. When we did their game against Lawton High, that was the first time they got Sasha Hunt back. Sasha Hunt, very good guard. Only 5'2", but she can hit threes, hit mid-range shots, get steals and scores, layups. And when they incorporate her more and more, this is a team with just outstanding depth. Deepest girls team, or maybe the deepest team I've seen in the 4+ years I've covered basketball for the Oklahoma Sports Network. All right, next up is Del City boys. Even though they lost a heartbreaker to Lott, it's not a terrible loss. And we all know how close that game was. And they got in some games at the McGinnis Classic. Some of it was canceled, but they did get to play Edmond Santa Fe, a 6A school, lose by 1. You know, that's not a big deal. Beat Class and SAS as well by 12. And again, I think because of their defense, that's going to make them a contender in every game they have. And they just have quick guards all around, and they got enough depth that I don't think the state tournament is as simple now as 3 games in 3 days. But that's something we can look forward to later. But they can handle it. Interesting thing about them, they are a late addition to the Titan Classic. They're coming back. They were in it since back in 2021. They were in it for several years. They won it in 2021. Then they left. It's not a tournament anymore, so they're not going to play. It's just a round robin. Maybe they'll go back to a tournament next year, but they will play 2 games on Saturday, and that's it. But it's still amazing they're going to play. They want to play 2 games. Coach Hatchett does in 1 day. That's what they have scheduled. So. We look forward to carrying those games. One of them will be against Edmond North, and that'll be a big challenge. All right.
Well, and before you go with that, another rematch with Lawton High on the 28th, which is that Tuesday, and we'll have that up on the network. So that's going to be an exciting. Maybe that's why he wants those two to prepare his team for a 4-quarter run against LHS.
Yes, because and that's I'm glad you mentioned that game, Eric. I'm so happy you'll be covering that game down in Lawton, because if Del City boys have any shot at winning the district, they have to win that game. If Lawton High wins, you could probably kiss it goodbye, because Lawton High had a big win at John Marshall yesterday. So they remain undefeated. John Marshall is their first loss. So the only threat to Lawton High after that would be John Marshall when they host them in the rematch. But I'm liking Lawton High to finish first in that district. But Del City could disrupt things if they can go into Lawton and win. They could. That game against Lawton High, Del City did not make a single three. They're not a great shooting team, but they can do better than that. So I expect them to shoot better against Lawton High, but Lawton High might shoot better as well. But on the other hand, it was just two outstanding teams playing. So after that, there's a bit of a drop. Some of it's because of problems these teams have had, and some of it's just because there's still a big unknown with them. The drop-off, the teams that are kind of struggling some are the Midwest City teams, but you still believe in their talent. And then there's the Carl Albert teams, and you saw them, Eric, in back-to-back games. They're very impressive, but a bit of some uncertainty there still, just because they haven't played the best teams in that district yet. But I'm still going to put the Midwest City boys at number 3, and the most likely teams to win state. And the reason is, it's not so much because they're defending champs, but they've done really well in non-district games. They went down to Texas and won 2 out of 3 games. They went to Douglas High School earlier in the year, beat 2 out-of-state teams. They beat Lawton MacArthur solidly in Yukon back in December. But in district games, they've had some struggles. They only beat Classen SAS last night by 3 points in a game we had on the Oklahoma Sports Network. And they still had probably their second-best player. Chance Davis did not play in that game. And he didn't play in their loss to John Marshall. So that's hurt them as far as district standings and stuff like that. But I think they can still be a factor, even if they don't host. They can go on the road to Carl Albert or El Reno and win a regional championship. And they're a dangerous team because of their streakiness. They're still a small team, but they got a young big guy who's helping them, who's getting better and better, Kenyon Brown. And when they get Chance Davis healthy, they can definitely make a run. The problem is they're not in good setting as far as district goes, but they did get a big win. I think they're currently 4th. I think they can climb up to at least 3rd, maybe 2nd. They'll have some big games coming up that we do plan on having on the network. They also have a rematch against Lawton when they host, and they also will host Del City again. So they're still a dangerous team. Next up, I'm going to have, it's almost a tie, but I'm going to still start with the Carl Albert girls team. Really good win against Lawton MacArthur. And Eric, I was hyping up that Jordan Richardson player, and then in the second half, she just got better, and that's a scary thing because
even better in the Elgin game. I mean, because I really, when you highlighted her, I watched her, and she's with the confidence that she has. As in, you say, well, as a freshman, she does not play like a freshman at all. She doesn't mind driving the basket. She has no hesitation, no fear factor. She's impressive to watch.
And the thing is, Eric, they have not had a player who can score who has that capability to score like that. And she's still not there yet. But I think by the time her career is over with Carl Albert, she will get there where she could score 20 a night. I like Audrey Plunkett and Jakari Brown a lot. They're still, I wouldn't describe them as 20-point-a-game scorers. They are very good players, still the 2 best players. So they use
Plunkett as that low post, though. So they want to get her the ball low. And meanwhile, Richardson, she's all over. I mean, she'll drive, she'll be at the top of the key, and you kind of have to say, where is she at any given time on the court? And I love players that are like that because she'll be in on a rebound, she'll be in on a drive, she'll have a kick out, So I mean, and then I said, for all the other teams say, gosh, she's going to be here for 4 years. We got to put up with her for another 3.
Yeah. Well, the only hesitation with them we'll see. The big test is going to be El Reno. However, again, they're going to play good teams as well in the Titan Classic. Obviously, they're the host team. They'll play later in the day. And the only hesitation is the thing that would make me hesitate. In years past, I think Carl Albert has gotten to the state tournament and fallen short because they didn't have that one player they could give the ball to and consistently create shots, good shots, and score. Again, Plunkett can develop into that. Jakari Brown can develop into that. Richardson can develop into that. But I'm still not sure if that will happen. So that's why I don't have them higher up. But I like what I'm seeing. Of course, they have a lot of big games coming up. They still haven't played El Reno yet. So they're undefeated in district. So is El Reno. The schedule makers wanted to wait for those teams to play, not once, but twice. And those will be some interesting games when they happen. Definitely something to follow there. And likewise for the Carl Albert boys. And I can't believe this, but just Jay Price, he's a great coach. And the way he's rebuilt this team has been incredible. Of course, you expect to do it with defense. When I saw them play against Lawton MacArthur, I think they played better team defense. They collapse in the paint so well, and then they get back to the shooters so well. They don't have one player they rely on. I wasn't sure who was going to score for them consistently, but they have a number of players who can do that. And again, they're so inexperienced, though. The only players that played much from last year's team that got all the way to the state semifinal was Brandon Rogers and LeBron Royal. But they didn't play that much. They had to replace so many good players. I'm still not sure what they'll do when, again, the lights come on. The lights are already on, but the game gets a little tougher.
A little brighter, yeah.
Yeah, a little brighter. But we'll know a lot more about him also in the Titan Classic because you got teams coming from Norman, Edmond, North. I don't know if they'll play all those teams. I know they're going to play like Collinsville. I don't know if that will be as much of a test, but still it'll be good to see how they do playing 3 games in 3 days, even though that may not be the format of this year's state tournament. So they're in 5th. Last I will have Midwest City girls, and they lost to Classen SAS. They made a good valiant effort to come from behind, being down 18 in that game, and got within 7, I think. But right now, they kind of have a bit of an identity problem on offense. They just, it's the same thing I talk about with Carl Albert, although I think Carl Albert has more of this. Who's going to give them consistent scoring and efficient scoring? And, they took some bad jump shots, I thought, and other times against Classen SAS is a good girls team, but the size kind of frustrated them both on offense and defense. On offense, they got frustrated by Classen's size on the perimeter and just got several passes deflected and the turnover issue. And I think this is going to be the first time now. It's still early. I could be wrong about this. It'll be the first time in 5 years that they do not host a regional. If they want to, they need to either beat Del City and hope Del City wins their rematch with Classen SAS, or they got to win out and beat Classen SAS by 11 points or more to win a head-to-head tiebreaker against them. And it's just a tall order. And Duncan's lurking. They'll have to play at Duncan again. And Duncan, it was a close game when they played at Midwest City earlier. In Midwest City, they had an injury since then. Now, Seven Miller's come back for him. She helps them in a lot of different ways. But offensively, this team is still in some kind of a state of flux right now. I think they will have a different tournament than what they usually play at Shawnee coming up. So we'll see about them. By the way, Midwest City boys, their tournament will be a really tough one at Union and Jinx. If they want to, they can rest Bubba Davis, and that will help them a lot. But that's where I stand with the Mid-Del teams, Eric.
Okay, now you mentioned the Titan Classic, which we're going to have all of those games on the network, so get ready for Thursday, Friday, Saturday mayhem. Out of those, and you mentioned some of them as some good matchups, let's kind of highlight for the viewers that are going to be wanting to tune in your projected, these are the ones to watch during the Classic tournament this week. Who would those matchups be?
The very first game, Edmond Memorial girls against Del City girls, would be one for sure. And then just On the girls' side, Sand Springs won it last year when it was only a girls' tournament. So anything involving Sand Springs and but I think that you got Edmond North in it, boys, both the Norman schools on the boys' side. So I think you'll have a lot of 6-8 games against 5-8 teams. And again, throwing in Dell City. Dell City will play Edmond North at the very end. So the very first game of the whole round robin invitational is Dell City Edmond Memorial girls. Very end, we'll have the very last game on Saturday night will be Dell City versus Edmond North boys. So I'll say the first and last games will be the two games I'm most interested in, because I think that Dell City, both boys and girls, have the best teams right now in Mid-Dell, if I had to pick one.
Well, these are tournament weekends. You got Martin Luther King Day on Monday, also the inauguration of the president. So that's a lot, to start out with. And then all these tournaments. You have the Comanche County basketball tournament, which we're going to cover the semifinals and finals on Friday and Saturday. So all local area schools, you'll be able to catch the semifinals and finals on the network. The Sweet Pea Invitational in Newcastle features a lot of our OSN teams. You got some Lawton schools, you got Newcastle. We'll kind of take a peek at those and kind of see who erupts of who had a good run in that. And then, of course, the Titan Classic. So you have all of that. And then Tuesday, we've got some great games. So we've got Bethany and Newcastle for the game of the week. We've also got Altus at Lawton High, Lawton High is going to Altus. And then we've also got Elgin. Elgin is going to play El Reno, and this is a good opportunity for me to get eyes on El Reno. And so those are going to be three games on Tuesday to kind of see how that matchup is. Elgin, unfortunately, their star go-to girl went down with a knee injury yesterday during the Carl Albert game. They had to ice it. I don't know if she's going to be back or not. She's a sophomore, but how she goes, how the team goes. So we'll kind of have to see how that goes with El Reno. So we got Tuesday's games. We got all of these tournaments. This is an exciting time if you love basketball, for sure.
Yeah, Eric, if I could add a little bit more to this. What's the interesting thing about these tournaments is they're tough competition. So these coaches really care about these games. So do the players. They mean nothing in the standings, though. They have no impact on playoffs like they used to as of 2 years ago. So it's the competition level is still great. So I will be interested to see if, coaches decide like, well, since these district games are so much more important, will they rest players? And you might see that, but, there could be value in that because you're putting other players that you don't know about as much. You're giving them some more experience, putting some more responsibility on their shoulders. And I also wanted to give kudos to another Oklahoma Sports Network team, Eric, and that's the Lawton MacArthur girls, because they were reeling after that Carl Albert game. 3 straight district losses, and they had to travel to Guyman the very next day.
Bus ride, yeah.
And I'm just glad I never had to make that trip. But they did. So the boys, but at least on the boys' side, they're not reeling. They only lost 2 in a row, and Guyman boys are not that good. The Guyman girls are pretty good. And Lawton MacArthur won by 5, 54-49. So that puts them in position again to maybe go back up and compete for a 3 seed. Right now, Guyman is still ahead of them because of their half game ahead. Just like Noble's a half game behind Lawton MacArthur, and Noble beat them. So it'll be interesting to see which of those teams end up with the higher seeds. Now, even if you can't finish the top 2, Eric, and I'm not going to go into all these details, but there's still several advantages to finishing 3rd over finishing 4th.
Yes.
So every seed matters, and Lawton MacArthur had a really good bounce back win on the girls' side. So the boys. Again, the boys weren't challenged as much, but still it's a tough trip to make. And so I think Lawton MacArthur boys are in great shape to be 3rd right now. And they're going to have to win a tough game at Carl Albert or against El Reno if they want to climb back into being in the top 2.
Well, the other thing is, too, and you've been around basketball enough for me to ask you this, because before it wasn't. And football, we just know. I mean, everybody's got a district. But not too long ago, basketball wasn't in districts. So comparing before when there weren't any districts and you kind of had to go, and like you mentioned, tournaments mattered, all of these other games. Now that you're in district, How do you think that has done basketball for Oklahoma?
So it's probably still hurt the tournaments a little bit in that, in some ways, what we have at Carl Albert might be better than the tournament because you're going to have these matchups already scheduled ahead of time for Friday and Saturday, not just Thursday. And you'll have more quality games because one of the things you might see in tournaments from time to time is you might see the host team does not have full 8 teams. So they have to go find a JV team somewhere. And, you got a JV team playing against a varsity team, at least for 3 games. And, that's just not really the type of basketball you want to have in a tournament. So now what we're seeing is instead of JV teams being invited, we'll just do a round robin. And in a way, that can be better because you have fewer teams, but that means more good games actually because you're not going to have an 8 seed playing a 1 seed and then playing a 4 or 5 seed and getting blown out. But again, the tournaments aren't hurt that bad because I think the games that are played, they still matter to the players and coaches. But what is good about districts is that for some reason, the OSSAA would have the brackets come out about a week and a half before the playoffs started. So you had 3 games or 4 games that were being played that had no consequence as far as seeding.
Right.
So we would have Del City and Carl Albert play the very last game of the regular season, and those teams already knew who they were playing and where they were going, or if they usually were hosting, but still they would know who they're playing and who they might play in the second round. And and so those games really didn't have any consequence. They still matter to the players and coaches again, but it didn't really matter. And now they could. We'll have some games taking place on the final day of district play, or the week or the day before the next to last games. Now they'll matter. Now they'll help determine seeding, and so those games now matter. And I think that's probably better than having the tournaments matter.
Sure. No, I agree. And I think it was a good decision to do that. Everything's kind of been streamlined. I know that they added the championships for football. Basketball, by the way, every single one of these games are going to be played at the Big House. They made that decision. So now there's going to be 3 championship weekends all through March. So it really is March Madness. You got the first week with the lower schools, and then you got you got 5A and 6A playing at the tail end. So you've got some really good basketball with 3 weekends of back to back, and you get those classes in so you can crown champions. And then still probably about a year away from the new Big House that is being built right next door. Can't wait to see that. And then they'll take the other one down. But one more year of playing in that traditional Big House. And be interesting because now the 6A, 5A schools will be there instead of at Tulsa or at Noble at Lloyd Noble at OU for the past several years. So it's going to be an exciting run. I'm excited to have that with us. And in fact, we're thankful that you have so much basketball knowledge that you bring that to us. I'll be really anxious when we get closer, when we start to say, okay, this has got to happen. And this is who's going to seed first and second. And then, we go from there. So that's right around the corner because, we're talking the tail end of January and we're talking February, just the last bit to take care of that. Yeah,
Eric, and it will get exciting because again in Mid-Del you got so many teams that are contending, and it'll be it's an interesting week now because they're still going with expanded regionals. So when I say interesting week, I mean the week of regionals, because when I say expanded, it's double elimination all the way through. So you'll have games from Tuesday, not Wednesday, but then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and you'll have elimination games on Saturday, and it's a lot more. It's a hassle to schedule, but it's also it's a very interesting because you're creating more opportunities for teams that are lower seed as well to get in. Like what happened with the Altus girls last year. They lost their first game, I believe, but they were able to make it all the way back to playing in an area championship consolation game for state.
Yeah, it's very good. So Jordan Rhea representing Mid-Del, and he's done the Mid-Del Sports Report all through the fall and kind of taking us through representing Midwest City, Del City, and Carl Albert. We thank you so much for your time and being with us this week.
One more thing, Eric.
Yes.
We're recording this on a Saturday afternoon, so I hope I'm not jinxing them, but I want to say best of luck to your Detroit Lions.
Yeah, I got my little emblem on right there. Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, I'm somewhat superstitious. I didn't wear one of the shirts that I would lose on Thanksgiving, so I had to make sure this is the new Christmas one that I got. So we're starting new, and it's not the same old Lions. So thank you for that little plug. And so I'll go Lions. We'll see how that is since this is on a Saturday. Mr. Jordan Rhea from the Mid-Del Schools, and we appreciate your time.
All right, thanks, Eric.
All right, so that kind of represents this edition of The Point After, all talking basketball, and hopefully you got a little bit of that, including most of our OSN teams, and that's really what we feature. If you want to be a part of the Oklahoma Sports Network, make sure you contact us. We've got 2 schools they're going to be adding. That announcement will come a little bit later on. We don't want to get that lost in all of the sports that we're doing now, but 2 schools that will be introduced to the network for next year to bring in a total of 15 and hopefully a little bit more. So if you want to be a part of that, make sure you connect to us. You can download our app. It's free. It's free to download, free to watch on Apple and Android devices, Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV for your home devices. And then also on social media, whether it be X, whether it be Facebook and Instagram, you can connect with us there. So live from the podcast studios from Cameron University, this has been a production of the Oklahoma Sports Network, The Point After from OSN.